Hey everybody, it's WriterPunk. For this week's video, I have created my own original tag. The Writers Are Punk tag is all about how you as an author go against the grain. If you're new to my channel, I am a dark fantasy writer, artist, and hobbyist world builder. Before we get into things, I just want to say I hope everyone is doing alright with the current state of the world, and please stay home, please wash your hands, please, do what you can to flatten the curve if that's even still a possibility. Anyway, the first question is, what makes your writing voice unique? This question may be a little tricky to answer, for me at least, so I'm going to respond first with what others have told me and then my takeaway from that. The most out there way my writing has been described is that it's like, quote, the flying whale scene in Fantasia but in a good way, end quote, which is probably the most confusing compliment I've received, but one I will always remember. They did clarify that it was supposed to be a compliment, they just didn't know how to articulate what they were saying, so what I think that means is that there's a sense of wonder. I had to go watch the scene because I've seen Fantasia, and this actually might be in Fantasia 2000. I've seen the scene that they were talking about, but I didn't remember it that well. So yeah, another person said that I am very effective at using short sentences to draw attention to shocking things, and that I have a simplistic yet effective way of writing descriptions. I don't really know how to build on that one. I think that's pretty good. I do think that I could use some more description somewhere. Other people have told me that, but I like the simplistic, describe enough for you to imagine it on your own kind of style. Personally, I think something that makes my voice unique is that I have a tendency to write in very close third-person point of view. So close that I might as well be writing in first person. I think this adds a certain depth of character to the point of view and forces you into the character's head while still maintaining some distance. I have written for the first time an entire novel in first person, and it's really not that different except I use the pronoun I. Question 2 is, have you ever been teased or bullied for being a writer or for a story that you've written? And what made you say, screw you, I'm gonna keep writing anyway? Being teased for writing happened more often when I was a teenager, mainly because I had friends when I was a teenager. I keep on writing because honestly at the time I had worse things going on in my life than being poked at because I wanted to be an author, so I just kind of didn't pay any attention to it. I have a tendency also, this was also something more when I was a teenager, I have a tendency to want to do something even more than I already did if someone tells me not to do it, so other kids making fun of me for spending free period in the library writing just made me want to do it more. So by senior year, I had 5 free periods, including lunch, and guess where I was? All of those periods, I basically lived in the library. However, because of this, I wrote over 200,000 words before I turned 18, and am the only person in my graduating class that I know of who has published fiction. Question 3. Which of your characters is your stick-it-to-the-man poster child? This has got to be a character from a book that I'm not going to name because it'll give away who it is, although by her description I am nearly positive anybody who knows what I'm writing knows which character this is. Without giving too much away, she falls in love with a foreign queen throughout the end of the story and does not hesitate at any given opportunity to call her out on things that this character thinks is wrong or is detrimental to her subjects or things like that. And all around, regardless of it to the queen, to other people, to other queens, she is just no. She'll just say, no, you're wrong. This is what you should do instead. You're wrong. And it's glorious to write in her point of view. I'm like smiling while I'm talking about her because she just doesn't care. She just doesn't care, and it's great. So I'm very excited to see what people will make of her. Question 4. What is the most unconventional way you've used or subverted a trope in your story? Without giving away too much, I wrote a story in which a character with unresolved trauma fell in love with someone, and it did not instantly heal them or even make them better at coping, nor did they or their partner expect it to. In fantasy novels at least, I've seen a not insignificant amount of characters who go through a traumatic event and have all of their pain just wiped away by true love. I don't think that this is a very accurate portrayal for most people who have trauma in their lives, and I think that it can contribute to inaccuracies and misunderstandings in how much another person is reasonably able to help you cope with your past. So for me, I try to write a more realistic, even if it's kind of not as much of a fun thing to read about, just because I think it's more respectful to that topic. Question 5. What's your favorite book that no one has ever heard of, or a character that everyone forgets about? I loved Brave Story by Miyuki Miyabe, but as far as I know, I'm like one of 3 people who has read it. It's a Japanese light novel that I believe has a manga and an anime and a film adaptation. It was one of my earliest inspirations to write, not necessarily with world building or plots or anything, because I liked it so much. Here is the back cover copy from Amazon if you wonder what it's about, so not really any spoilers. Young Wataru Mitani's life is a mess. His father has abandoned him and his mother has been hospitalized after a suicide attempt. Desperately, he searches for some way to change his life, a way to alter his fate. To achieve his goal, he must navigate the magical world of Vision, a land filled with creatures both fierce and friendly, and to complicate matters, he must outwit a merciless rival from the real world. Wataru's ultimate destination is the Tower of Destiny, where a goddess of fate awaits. Only when he has finished his journey and collected 5 elusive gemstones will he possess the Demon's Vein, the key that will unlock the future. Charity, bravery, faith, grace, and the power of darkness and light. These are the provinces of each gemstone. Brought together, they have the immeasurable power to bring Wataru's family back together again. This is also one of the first stories that I drew fan art for of the character Mina, which is a practice I've mostly ended as an adult. I actually kind of want to see if I can find her drawing, because I have an archive of drawings I've done since I was in like middle school, probably earlier. So that'll appear right now if I do have it. Question 6. What's a trend in your genre that you don't like? This is going to sound ridiculous, maybe, but hear me out and listen to the caveat. The female lead being a Barbara badass who can take down 10 men in one fell swoop of her claymore and can crush kingdoms with the power of feminine energy, being seen as the end-all be-all of strong female characters. It is my honest opinion that it is entirely possible to have strong female characters who come from a range of backgrounds, like businesswomen, crime lords, artists, huntresses, queens, housewives, nuns, flower arrangers, politicians, warriors, orators, and yes, knights. Physical strength and capability is not a stand-in for complex, well-developed characters, which is why I prefer to use the term complex female characters when describing what's usually referred to as a strong female character. I think that sometimes the want to create a physically powerful female character overshadows the want to create a deep and complex female character. It's not a stand-in. You still need to treat them like they're people. I don't want this video to turn into a rant, so if you're interested in hearing a full video tirade about this, please leave a comment below. Question 7. Do you want to be a traditionally published author, or is self-publishing your jam? As of now, I am considering a hybrid route that focuses more on small or niche presses and self-publishing than attempting a traditional run. I have many reasons for doing this, too many to list here, which is why I am currently scripting a video about this decision. I am under no illusions that my work, which is very lore-heavy and deals with some difficult topics, does not march to the beat of its own drummer when it comes to mainstream publishing. I'm okay with this, and it's a conscious decision. It is by design that it's a little bit much, because if I'm not having fun, why write at all? I think it's also worth it to mention that for this reason, in the future, I would like to open a small niche press for dark fantasy stories. I really want to be able to provide a platform for other writers in a similar position as me, because sometimes things can get overlooked. That is my mini soapbox about that. Moving on to the next question. Question 8. What's something you do as a writer that you haven't seen other writers do? Said it once, I've said it again, I've said it like 10 times at this point, but I'm gonna repeat it. I am a rigorous planner. At this point, I don't even refer to my outlines as outlines, but as proto-drafts, because they're usually between 8 and 10,000 words long, and the highest I've gone is 15,000 for Silverblood. They are absolutely and utterly exhaustive. I have yet to meet another planner who does it like this. There are planners who write very intricate and extensive outlines that I know of, but not like I do it. Some people have asked if it seems like a waste of my time to devote this much of it to an outline, but I would say it has genuinely and appreciably reduced the amount of time it takes me to draft, revise, edit, and resolve issues because I get to see the whole story and where the biggest potential issues lie before I ever get to them. I am also very familiar with the character's necessary psyche based on what I know they need to be capable of doing or going through, and can have a firm grasp on their motivations and relationships, sometimes before they're even introduced. Question 9. Do you use a pseudonym or your real name for your works? That's classified. Joking aside, I use a pseudonym. I personally prefer anonymity and would like to keep my writing separate from my daily life. Especially if I ever have occasion to do something like a book signing, I would really like to have author me and me as two separate entities. Kind of like WriterPunk and author me having different names, although honestly it's not that hard to figure out my author name if you stick around my channel. This also helps distinguish my works if I ever decide to publish outside the fantasy genre. And if you don't know why that's a thing, for example, I write dark fantasy books, and as I mentioned earlier, they have difficult topics that are discussed within them. And so if I turn around and try to write like children's fiction, for example, what you would expect under my author name is much different than what you would expect from children's fiction, so I'd either use my real name or another pen name to publish that other kind of fiction under. Question 10. What's a trope, narrative style, character archetype, story theme, or plot device that you love but most people don't like? Give me all of your characters who are just trying to survive. I love characters who don't have a lot of personal agency, whether that's because a lack of agency is imposed upon them by others or their culture, or because they haven't recognized their full potential yet. I believe that there is strength in endurance, and that kind of strength deserves its 15 minutes in the spotlight. This is not to say that I like characters who do nothing at all to change their situation, because that's really boring. Rather, that just because they try to change their situation doesn't mean that anything appreciably changes or that everything is suddenly fine because they made an attempt to seize their own destiny. I have two characters who have very little personal agency, and the reactions to these characters, because they're in different stories and their circumstances are very different, I think it's interesting to see how people react to them, because one of them everyone generally likes, and that's because at the end she kind of succeeds in coming into her own self-assertion, I guess, and the other character does not. Because of this, I've noticed that some people like the first character a lot more than the second. However, both of them tend to be either an all or nothing kind of character in terms of who likes them. You either really like either of these characters or you really do not like either of them, and I think it's interesting. Anyway, that's the tag, people. This is the WriterPunk tag. I am going to tag the following channels verbally and also below, but feel free to take part if you want, and I haven't mentioned you because the more the merrier. I would appreciate it if you could credit me somewhere if you do the tag. Eileen Nestman, Julian Greystroke, Kat Bowser Fantasy Therapist, Jess Samuels, Alicia Peak, The Novel Nana, Rachel Bateman, Austin Land, and Erin Lee. I have tagged all of their channels below, like I said, so please give them a visit if you like. As always, I appreciate any likes, comments, and subscriptions. Thank you all for watching, I hope you stay safe, and I'll see you sometime soon.